Welcome to today's explainer. Look, we know you work incredibly hard. You train, you hustle, you invest, and you're slowly but surely building your wealth. But here's the big question. How do you protect that hard-earned progress from life's totally unpredictable moments? How do you make sure that one string of bad luck doesn't completely undo years of climbing? Well, today, we're going to construct your very own financial fortress. Okay, let's dive right into this. The source material paints this really vivid, almost scary picture. Imagine spending years climbing a massive mountain. You've trained, you've sacrificed, you've saved, and you're finally starting to enjoy the view from the top. Then, literally out of nowhere, the ground just gives way. That visceral, stomach-dropping feeling, that's exactly what a sudden financial crisis feels like without a safety net. A car engine suddenly fails, a roof starts leaking, or a job just disappears. And none of these events politely ask if you're ready for them. It's helpful to think of an emergency fund kind of like the airbags in your car. You absolutely hope you never, ever have to see them. But man, when a crash happens, they will save your life. Now, what's really interesting here is looking at the actual real-world cost of being unprepared. Let's look at a tale of two emergencies. First, consider John. He actually has $15,000 invested, which is great, but zero in emergency savings. When his transmission blows, it's a massive $4,000 nightmare. Because he has zero cash on hand, he's forced to swipe a credit card at a punishing 25% interest rate. Or worse, he has to sell his investments and pay taxes on those gains. Suddenly, his emergency just became vastly more expensive. Now, flip over to Sarah. She's facing the exact same $4,000 repair, but Sarah has a $10,000 emergency fund sitting right there. So what does she do? She just writes a check. She pays cash. There's absolutely no debt, no panic, and no waking up at 3 a.m. stressed out of her mind. It's the exact same emergency, but an entirely different reality. The profound lesson here: cash buys you options, while debt removes them entirely. The difference between John's outright panic and Sarah's peace of mind is just monumental. So how do we get you to where Sarah is? That brings us to Section 1, the blueprint. This is the sequential architecture for building out your financial security. Let's move along and see how this actually builds. Here is your precise step-by-step roadmap. First, of course, you absolutely must cover your basic living expenses, your rent, food, and utilities. But I really want you to look closely at steps 2 and 3. Notice how building a starter emergency fund happens before aggressively paying off your high-interest debt? Now, why is that? It's because debt makes emergencies worse. Think about it. If you throw every single extra penny at your credit cards but have zero actual cash savings, the second you get a flat tire, you are forced right back into that exact same high-interest credit card debt. Having that initial cash buffer first buys you the time and the options to survive life's storms without falling deeper into the debt trap. Once that debt is finally cleared, then you move to step 4, building the full fund. And finally, step 5, investing for that long-term growth. Let's zero in entirely on step 2 for a moment, the starter fund. Your absolute first non-negotiable goal is $1,000. That's it. Don't stress about saving tens of thousands of dollars right now. This beginner target is incredibly specific, and more importantly, it is highly achievable. It's custom designed to cover the most common everyday surprises. We're talking a minor car repair, a fridge that suddenly quits, or a totally unexpected medical deductible. The whole point of hitting this exact number is to put up a barrier so that you literally stop relying on credit cards when life inevitably happens. And this brilliantly illustrates how your fortress grows over time, working its way up in tiers. We start at the beginner tier, like we just talked about, to stop the credit card bleed. But once that nasty high-interest debt is completely gone, you get to upgrade to the intermediate tier. This means sitting down and calculating exactly what it costs you to survive for 3 full months, just your rent, food, utilities, and insurance. So if your bare-bones survival number is $3,200 a month, your target is going to be about $9,600. This buys you absolutely critical time if you were to lose your job. Finally, we reach the advanced tier, 6 to 12 months of expenses. As the sources point out, this is absolutely vital if your income bounces around from month to month, if you're self-employed, or if you work in an industry that's a bit unpredictable. Basically, the less predictable your income is, the larger your safety net needs to be. Moving right along to Section 2. Rules of the fortress. Here, we need to establish some strict boundaries for your money. Because a fortress is really only as strong as its walls, right? Which brings us to the absolute biggest objection people have when they start out. Why in the world would I let my money just sit there earning less than the stock market? Okay, let's address this head on. Imagine you take your hard-earned emergency fund and you invest it. Then, out of nowhere, the stock market crashes 35%. And in that exact same week, you get laid off. This is the ultimate nightmare scenario. Because all your cash is tied up in a crashing market, you are literally forced to sell your investments at a huge loss just to keep the lights on and pay rent. Your safety net practically vanished at the exact second you needed it the most. That nightmare scenario tells us everything we need to know about where this money actually belongs. The number one job of your emergency money is reliability, period. Growth is totally secondary. Because of that, your fortress has to be kept safe, liquid, and incredibly easy to access. The sources heavily recommend parking it in a high-yield savings account or a money market account. You want it entirely separate from your daily checking account so you don't accidentally spend it, but safely shielded from the crazy ups and downs of the stock market. So the crucial point here is that we have to define exactly what constitutes a real emergency. And honestly, we need to be really strict with ourselves here. The criteria are simple. It must be unexpected, necessary, and urgent. So yes to a blown alternator, a sudden job loss, or having to fly home for a family emergency. But it is a hard, absolute no to a flash sale on a vacation, holiday shopping, or grabbing the newest smartphone. A great rule of thumb is to ask yourself, if I don't spend this money today, will someone get hurt, or will I lose my ability to go to work? If the answer is no, leave the fortress alone. But hey, remember, if a real emergency does strike and you have to drain the fund, that is absolutely not a failure. That is exactly what it's there for. You just have to treat it like a spare tire on your car. Once you put it on, your top priority is getting a new spare back in the trunk. And that leads us to Section 3, the call to action. It is time to start building today. I know, staring down a goal of 3 to 6 months of living expenses can feel completely overwhelming. But hear me out. Slow progress is still progress. Nobody builds a fortress in a single afternoon. The secret sauce here is in the micro wins. Don't go in trying to save 10 grand on day one. Start with 20 bucks. Start with 50. The absolute most powerful tool you have in your arsenal, automation. Set up an automatic transfer for every single payday. That way the money moves straight to your savings account before you even have a chance to look at it. It completely removes the temptation to spend it on something else. Remember, consistency always beats intensity. The sources highlight this amazing example. If you automate just $100 a week in 1 year without taking any stock market risks whatsoever, you will have quietly and safely built yourself a $5,200 fortress. That's huge. Which really brings us to the core philosophy of our explainer today. Building wealth isn't just about how much money you can earn, it's about how much money you actually get to keep when life gets incredibly messy. The quote says it all. Investments grow wealth. Emergency funds protect wealth. You absolutely, unconditionally need both. This fund doesn't just protect your bank balance, it protects your peace of mind. It protects your freedom to make decisions, keeping you from taking out desperate, predatory loans or staying in a toxic job simply because you feel like you can't afford to leave. So, what does this all mean for you? Well, it leaves us with one final, highly provocative question to ponder. Take a hard look at your own finances right this second. If your car's engine completely failed tomorrow morning, who are you? Are you John, relying on panic and high-interest debt to bail you out? Or are you Sarah, calmly writing a check from a place of total security? I want to challenge you today. Log into your banking app, set up that automatic transfer right now, and actively choose financial peace. It is time to start building your fortress.